There we go.
Hey, what's up? Hello, it's Auntie Cubana coming at you with another episode of the Unladylike Lounge podcast. And today I'm joined by Marc Paisant. Marc, how are you today?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thank you so much for joining us. And why don't you take a second, brag on yourself a little bit, and tell us kind of what we'll be talking about and what makes you an expert in that field.
Brag about myself. You're asking me to do something I don't usually do. But name's Marc Paisant. She says I am a father, a husband, a podcast host, a mental health advocate, a certified personal trainer, strength and conditioning coach, nutritionist, and just a guy trying to make it in this world. And I figured a while back that with all the just negative stuff that's happening and affecting people's lives, like, why not be just a beacon of positivity and help people put a smile on their face, laugh a little bit, laugh at themselves, and just, make sure energy in, energy out. Make sure we understand that. And if I can get even more cliche, just don't pour from an empty cup, and make sure you're doing things. I'm all about them. I'm all about them. There'll probably be more, but just make sure we're doing those things that help you just recenter, refocus, prioritize yourself, and just look to have fun and enjoy this life we have.
100%. I absolutely love it. And I am so looking forward to hearing all that you have to share with us today. What do you think is the biggest struggle when it comes to mental health and trying to achieve a sense of success?
That is such a great way to put it, because that is what it's all about. Like, regardless of what you're going through, it's like, are you setting yourself up for success? Are the people that you work with, whether that be a therapist, a family member, whoever it is that you're working with, are they helping you set yourself up for success? And one of the things that I tell people literally all the time is it's unfair, the amount of pressure we put on ourselves. It's totally unfair. And since we're getting down to the end of the year, at least that's when we're recording this show, like, everyone and their mother is like thinking about New Year's resolutions. Like, this is 2024 is going to be, I'm going to eat right. I'm going to get to the gym eight times a week. I'm going to be present in my marriage. I'm going to take care of my kids. I'm going to limit my TV, all this stuff. And it's like, do you know how much pressure you're putting on yourself?
Yes.
There's a reason why so many resolutions fail. It's because we decide at this one arbitrary moment in our life that we're going to change every habit we've had for our entire life. Like, if you want to set yourself up for success, to answer the question is like, stop putting so much pressure on yourself.
That part. Now, what kind of struggles have you dealt with on your own journey that my audience members kind of relate to and maybe learn some coping mechanisms, things of that nature, to help them not apply so much pressure to their lives?
Well, I mean, this could go so many different ways, but the one thing that I think affects so many people is thinking that they're alone in their journey, like thinking that no one else is going through it. And I can remember not days, not weeks, but years that I felt alone. And I felt that everyone else in the world was getting through, scotch-free, and they weren't going through anything that I was going through. And it really wasn't until that I really started to intentionally work on my mental health and work on my mindfulness that my eyes were opened up to other people that were going through kind of the same anxieties, kind of the same, triggers. And all the triggers might be the same. All the pressure might be the same. We all have jobs that are hard for us. We all have family members that get on our nerves. We all have that first date that's tough. But we all have different coping mechanisms. Some people, and negative and positive. And my coping mechanism for the longest time was food. It really was. It was food, and it was sugar, to be specific. And I turned that into, okay, what if instead of eating, if I just go for a run instead? What
Okay.
if instead of eating, I read a book or I journal? And don't get me wrong, like, I'm not saying that this happened overnight and everything was easy, but
For sure.
I started with the first step. With the first step. First step turns to a second step. A crawl turns to a walk turns to a run. And by the time you're 3 months into it, you're like, oh, I can do this. I can do this. So yeah.
It's those baby steps that lead into fully developed habits. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of tend to give up on themselves in their journeys, because there's that kind of desire for instant gratification. Like, if I'm not seeing results right now, I'm not ever going to see those results. But sticking with it, I feel, is definitely key. What has been some healthy coping mechanisms that you found and seem to work better for you? As far, you mentioned running or reading a book.
Mhm.
What other ways have those coping mechanisms or other coping mechanisms helped kind of rechannel your thinking?
So I'm going to kind of combine what you just said and the answer to this question, because instant gratification it's such a killer of dreams and hopes and aspirations. Because if you think about it, like, it took you a long time to get here, it's not going to go away instantly, or it's not going to change instantly. And even if you talk about coping mechanisms, I could sit here right now and tell you that I found a way for me going to the gym and lifting heavy things
Okay.
is a way of coping. However, the day after I went to the gym for the first time, I didn't see muscles. Like, I didn't see growth. I didn't see anything like that. So if that instant gratification was there, I would have been like, oh, this is not worth it. Like, why am I going to do this? I'm going to head over to the burger spot and get a burger. But
Yes.
what I think a lot of people can understand, or I hope they can understand, is whatever your coping mechanism is, whatever you want to try. People should try, mindfulness. They should try journaling. They should try going for a walk. They should try sitting in the sun. They should try going barefoot on the grass. They should try so many different things. However, they need to make sure that they understand that this is a process. And
Yes.
it's not going to, like, I can't take my socks off and go outside in the grass and be like, oh, yeah, everything's gone. Like, everything's
Right.
done. Like, I didn't know it was this easy.
Right.
But to answer your question specifically for me, I have learned that not only has physical fitness helped with my mental health, but I had to lean into it. And what I mean by that is, I used to get stressed at work or get stressed with a conversation, whatever, and be like, I'm going for a run. And I go
Okay.
for a run, whatever that is, a mile, 2 miles, 5, 10 miles, whatever it was. I'd run to go away from it, to get away from it. And then I come home tired and I'd be like, oh yeah, now I have to deal with this. And now I've just changed my mindset, just a little tweak to it. And I say, okay, I'm going to run to take care of this. I'm going to run to figure this out. I'm going to run to keep this in my mind and work on a solution. And it's done two things mainly. One, it's made my runs a whole lot easier. Stress is like not there. But two, I've come back with like 14 different solutions and 14 different ways I can deal with this, rather than forgetting about it for an hour and then coming back to it. So it's a little bit of a mind game, but at the same time, it works. And it works. And a lot of people will tell you, they'll use two words: purpose and intent. Those are the two words people should remember when they're dealing with coping mechanisms.
Absolutely. And I love that you put emphasis on just kind of how changing your perception of something can really change the outcome or the result, or what you actually find within that, whether it's your coping mechanism or or whatever you're dealing with, just changing that perception ever so slightly can make all the difference in the world. I love that.
Yes.
One thing I wanted to ask you was, how do you think we can open up the conversation about mental health among men, people of color? Just, this is coming from my personal experience, so I can't speak for everybody, but I know in my little corner of the world, there's a lot of the whole, well, men don't have mental health issues, or they're not, at least they're not allowed to express or seek help, and it's also such a big thing among the community, people of color. How do we open the floor to that conversation and make it okay and acceptable for people to reach out and get that help, or talk among their peers?
So great question. And I love answering this question. And I love answering this question with just the preface that you don't have to listen to a word I say. You can, Mark, we don't believe, listen, I've stopped caring about people believing what I say or believing a long time ago. And that's helped my stress level, as you can imagine. But if we're being totally honest, the first step to this is understanding why that is. Let's not just run into this conversation and say, hey, Black men, do this. No. Hey, Hispanic men, do this. No. I was talking to someone the other day, and I'm trying to figure out what the conversation was about. But we were talking about this exact thing, and one of the people that she deals with is a Hispanic man who his wife laughs at him when he cries or gets emotional.
No.
And the people listening right now that jaws just dropped, it's like, these are things that happen.
Yes.
And what's happened now is that the young son that they share now has accepted, screaming and anger as a way to, de-stress himself, rather than doing what all kids do and crying, which is normal. So the reason I mention that is because we have generational traumas. We have generational, mores that happen, that who is allowed to be emotional in the family, in the nuclear, if we're, I know nuclear family is different nowadays, but if we go back, who was allowed to cry back during slave times? Who was allowed to cry back during Jim Crow? Who was allowed to cry during the Great Depression? Who was allowed to, it wasn't men, and it wasn't men of color. If you weren't at work and then at home taking care of your family, and then back at work and then at home taking care of your family, then you weren't, quote unquote, a man. And so what happens is young boys see that and they think, oh, that's what I have to be. I have to be stoic. I have to take care of my family. Cannot show emotion. If I do, that's bad. Over and over and over again. So that's where that comes from. And don't get me wrong, looking back on conversations I had with my dad when I was younger, it's like there wasn't much emotion there. There wasn't, it was kind of weird that I had emotions growing up. So if we all understand that is a truth, that is a fact, that is not my opinion, that is not hyperbole, that is the truth. If we can all get to that point, that is a huge part to get through. Now, once we've gotten past that, we have to understand that most men don't just come out and say, hey, I'm not feeling great. Let's talk, buddy. No, men don't.
Right.
A lot of men, and for discussion's sake, a lot of women don't do that too, but more women are open to discussing their feelings. Absolutely. Mainly because they've been brought up in a time, in places where their emotions are acceptable. But we also live in a culture where women's feelings are more accepted than men's when it comes to sadness or being tired or, things like that. So men usually have direct ways of just wanting to discuss something. And I say it all the time, if you're roommates with a man and he comes in from his job and he plops down on the couch and he's exhausted and all he says is, oh man, what a day.
Mhm.
That's him saying, let's talk. That's him saying, man,
Yes.
I need to get something off my chest. A lot of
100%.
times what we'll do is we'll say, oh man, it's all good. Game's on, grab a beer. Let's watch.
Yes.
And it's swept under the rug.
It really
When at that moment, pause the TV, put the phone down, make sure he has your full attention and say, hey, what's going on? Let's talk about it.
yes.
And if we change that little moment in life, if we change that little moment in so many relationships, it becomes so much easier for us to talk about our feelings.
It really does. It allows people to have almost this, how do I want to word
It's
this?
just
Don't
this
come
open,
for me.
yeah. They people are afraid to be vulnerable, but it gives them this open space to just
Yes.
be, to just be.
Yes. Exactly. And one of my favorite quotes of all time is, out of your vulnerabilities will come your strength. And I just feel if we can create a safe space for all people, whether it's women, men, children, people of color, what have you, if we can just create those safe spaces among the people we truly love, that's going to amplify throughout their network and their network's network. And eventually we can have these open conversations. We can have an interaction that could potentially be life-saving. We have so many people who are turning to self-harm or even suicide because they don't feel like they have anywhere that they can express themselves freely. So that's I 1000% agree with what you mentioned, and thank you so much for addressing that for sure. One thing that people are finding is that there is such a high demand for mental health help with mental health in the medical field, and there's just such a lack of resources, such a lack of staffing, things of that nature. How would you, if someone were to come to you and say, hey, I'm struggling, how would you, help them navigate, okay, this is something that we can work on together, or no, this is something you really do need to actually see a professional for? Because I feel like a lot of our audience members have friends in those situations, and they want to help, they want to be, you know open to whatever their friends are dealing with, they just don't know how.
Yeah, this is one of those tough things where kind of you damned if you do, damned if you don't. And I like to always preface things with telling people I'm not a therapist. I'm not a medical in a medical field. I'm not a specialist, anything like that. I'm an advocate, and I'm here to talk to anybody that wants to talk. However, I think one of the things that we can do, and this is what makes this conversation so difficult sometimes for so many people, is that when we talk about mental health, people automatically get this vision in their mind. They assume that we're talking about something that's, depressing and something gonna be sad, and oh my God, I don't want to deal with this conversation. And oh, is Mark depressed again? I don't want to deal. Like, no,
Right.
that when we talk about mental health, we're talking about like anybody who has a brain and has feelings.
Yes.
So one of the things that I like to tell people is that we need to note our good days. We need to note our happiness. We need to note our joy. We need to tell people when they make us happy. We need to express to people how they make us feel, because if we do that, then we'll understand what those conversations feel like. If one of the little changes I made in my life a long time ago, and I forgot who I heard it from, and everybody kind of says it now. We kind of say it in passing, is instead of I appreciate what you did, or I appreciate this, like, I started saying I appreciate you. And we kind of say it's kind of like the what's up or the how you doing. Like, it's not really something that people latch onto. It's kind of just part of our vernacular now. But the I appreciate you is one of the strongest things that you can tell somebody when you actually mean it, because it doesn't focus on the action that they did. It doesn't focus on the thing that they produced. It doesn't focus on the job that they did. It
Right.
focuses on the person that they are.
Mhm.
Um, and I think having this conversation, having somebody that is comfortable enough to take compliments from you, to take, to latch on to your affirmations, to latch on to, man, you know what? I'm so glad you're in my life. Like that was, what you did for me was awesome, but I got to tell you right now, like you bring joy to my life.
Yes.
Like those things will go a long way in having those conversations when someone isn't feeling the best, or when someone needs a helping hand, or when someone is struggling with being vulnerable with you.
Hmm.
So I think I don't want to answer that question in a way it's like, hey, do this, do that, do this. No, I don't want to answer
Right.
it that way, because that could, I mean, anybody can answer that question. Like, you could have a medical professional here to answer that question. But the fact of the matter is that mental health doesn't have to be depressing and sad. It can be
Yes.
joyous. And we could talk about great things. We could talk about how we felt after, like, I haven't seen you in 3 years, man. You don't understand how it makes me feel to see you. So I think
Yes.
that's where the conversation should go.
How were you able to? One thing that I'm gathering is you were able to change your perception in a lot of different areas that kind of turned these negative thoughts or ideas or situations in your own life into positive ones, or kind of at least flip them on their head. How were you able to change your perception, and do you feel like that was the most important thing to help you along your journey?
Yes, because two major things that I did. Yeah, other than, getting fit and all that stuff and making sure I was, eating right and all that good stuff like that I could sit here and tell you that. But one is prioritizing myself, like prioritizing my time, prioritizing what I do, and making sure that there's time set aside in my day for me before anybody else, before anybody else. Like, that sounds selfish. It's not. Um, and this might sound weird or cold or direct or rigid. I don't know what the word you want to use, but I stopped caring. And what I mean by that is, right now, someone listening to this who can probably think back less than a day to something that they found on social media, or something in the news, or something that popped up on their feed, that's like, I don't like that. I don't, politically charged, socially charged, racially, whatever it is. I
Mhm.
don't like that. I need to reply, or I need to put my 2 cents in. I need to talk to somebody about that. What that's doing is that's taking whatever mood that you were in and putting you in this bad, just down mood, and taking energy out of your life to care about this thing.
Yes.
For It was almost an automatic switch the first time I started to write my response to something. I'm going to put my comments in this. I don't like how the Kardashians are raising their kids. I don't care I'm going to say what I'm going to say. Then I stopped for a second and I said, does anybody really care what I think? It's like, no, no one's going to read my comment and be like, God, we need to get that Mark on 1,000. Like, no, no one's going to care about
Right.
that. So why should I?
Exactly.
And I literally stopped caring about the things that did not bring positive energy into my life. And it literally opened me up to so many things. And I know it's hard. It's one of those things that it's very hard. It's ingrained in young people now, as you're growing up with all the social media. Like, it's almost like inviting you, like, we want to know your opinion. Even the news nowadays is like, tweet us the photos of the snow so we can see. And it's like, oh, I want to get on there. I want to give. It's like,
Right.
it's taking energy out of your life, and it's this external force is changing your mood instantaneously. You could be in a great mood for all day, and then that one thing pops up on your feed. It's like, I don't like that. I'm going to respond. Like, why? It's not
Right.
going to add anything to your life.
Right. Just releasing that negative energy, and that thought process that everything requires a reaction can just do so many wonders.
Yeah.
And I noticed, I can't, again, I can't speak for anybody else, but it seemed like my switch kind of flipped once I hit 30. I was instantly like, I don't care what anybody thinks about me, my opinion. And I, like, while I can respect other people's opinions and them and their whatever, I don't have to agree with it. I don't have to care. It's not my circus, not my monkeys, and I'm not going to let any of it stop my show. So I love that. I absolutely love that. Where can my audience find more of your work and kind of keep up with your journey and tools and resources?
So I'm so happy to tell you that my website just got done. I'm still updating and all that stuff. So marcpaisant.com, marcpaisant.com. It's where you can find a lot of information on my podcast, a lot of information on booking me if you want to do any kind of virtual training or any other type of training. And then also links to other things, my IG, Paisant_fitness, or if you want to learn about the podcast, hosted _by Marc. And then last one, I have started, and I say started, the TikTok journey.
Oh, yeah.
Just so everybody knows I'm over 40, so this was very scary for me. I'm learning, so don't laugh at me, please.
Right.
If you want to actually, if you want to laugh at me, that's fine. I really really don't care. Please come in and laugh at me. It's fine, as long as you're following me. Like I'm trying to, like, that's it. But those are the two things. And if you just, you know what I do, and this will tell you how old I am. Like I do a lot of the work I do on LinkedIn, and because a lot of the work that I do is helping people cope with job related stress, because that is for people in my age range and my age, like the number one cause of stress after money, financial issues is your job. And they're kind of connected. I mean, they're kind of connected. So I try to find ways to help people cope with job stress and find that work-life balance.
Awesome. Awesome. For everybody who didn't get those handles for social media or his website, you already know I'm going to drop it in the description box below, as well as with our audio format as well. And what kind of final words do you have for our audience members to leave them with?
I always leave, every time I ask this question, I always leave with the same thing. And again, I've talked about, self-care is not selfish. And I tell people, I don't know how many times I've said this in my life, but think about all the things that are important to you, whether that's if your job is important, whether your family is important, your marriage is important, whether the hobbies you do, whether you play athletics, whatever you count, if you do poker, whatever it is in your life that you find important, that brings joy to your life, there's one common denominator, and it's you. It's literally you. That is not me just making stuff up. It's literally you. So if you don't take care of yourself, it is next to impossible to take care of all these other things or be present in them. So please make sure you are making time for yourself and taking care of yourself and pouring back into your cup.
Absolutely. Because as you said in the beginning, you can't pour from an empty one.
Can't do it.
For sure. Well, thank you so much, Marc, for joining us today. I appreciate you and all that you had to give to our audience members today. And for our audience members, you already know, I love y'all fiercely.